Hello, folks. My name is Travis. Welcome to this edition of Hope on Wheels. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not, welcome in to my channel. This edition of Hope on Wheels is going to be about something that honestly has been brought to my attention by a couple of people that I've worked with and some other individuals that I've just met over recently. And the topic is this. It's really short and sweet. I'm going to talk about people with complex medical conditions like myself, and I'll use myself as an example. And again, I'm going to put a disclaimer right here. This video is going to be based on just my experience only. So don't go into this with the idea of, well, Travis said this, so that must be how it's going to be for me. Please don't. Don't do that. I'm not the be-all end-all expert for this, okay? I just am going to use my experience because it's what I've noticed. All right, let me be clear. And as an advocate, I'm just going to try to steer you in directions to look into and avoid if you can. Or who knows, you may not want to. Anyway, moving forward. I have noticed in my life, when somebody is trying to get a job and they experience what is considered a complex medical need disability such as cerebral palsy, or as most of you have heard me say, a challenge in life called disability, or called CP, excuse me, you will find that it's not exactly easy to get a job. And when you do get a job, especially when you're starting out, big time when you're starting out, you run into problems, not the least of which is not just perception of who you are as a person, but society, at least in my experience, sometimes looks at somebody and says, Travis is not capable of doing that. They may not say it out loud, but internally. And people say, well, doesn't that explain why the Americans with Disabilities Act exists? Is so that that kind of discrimination doesn't occur. Yes, totally correct. But you'll find a lot of people say, well, he may have the mental capability of doing the job, but physically he can't, and we're not willing to adapt enough to let him do that job. We'd rather have somebody that doesn't need the adaptations to do that job. And then you'll run into other situations, which is more commonly what I ran into in my life, and I still run into on occasion, that not currently with my current employer. Let me be clear, my current employer has been great to me. Hope Community Resources is phenomenal when it comes to helping people with disabilities live the life they want with the supports they direct. They've been very supportive of me specifically. And again, as I stated earlier in the video, this video is going to be based on just my experience. So please don't use me as a baseline and say it's going to be this way for everybody. But at least people with complex medical needs, one of the things that you run into is finding a job that somebody will let you try to work at. But not only that, let's say you find a job. I'll give you an example. I was about 18 at the time when this one happened. My first real thing that you could almost call a job was working for the Fairbanks Daily News Miner. And all I was doing was I was a sales rep. In other words, I call people on a list daily and try to sell newspaper subscriptions. Sounds like a fun job and a fairly easy one, right? Wrong. I had to learn how to pitch myself to sell newspapers because most of the time you'd say, my name is Travis from the Fairbanks Daily News Miner, and people would hang up on me because I wasn't very good at getting their attention uplifted beforehand. But there was one other problem with that job that had nothing to do per se with the job as much as it did with my circumstances around life. And what I mean by that is I got very, there were months where I would make a lot of money. There was one month where I remember there's one month where I made almost, $1,300 in a month because I just got lucky that month and I was able to sell a bunch of newspapers. And a bunch of people would say, well, $1,300 isn't a lot of money, Travis, when you consider all the expenses. It's not. But when you consider benefits, limitations, disability, all that stuff, that's a lot of money for somebody in my situation. I wasn't rich, but that was a lot of money in one sitting. Here's the problem I'm getting to, folks. When I first started out living on my own, I was on just the basic benefit package for Social Security, which is Social Security income, not Social Security disability income. Here's the problem with Social Security income, folks. A lot of times, at least back when I was doing this, from my experience, I would work 1 month, I'd make a lot of money. Let's say the next month I didn't. Well, your SSI check was based on, for each month, based on how much money you made the previous month. So let's say 1 month I made no money. Well, that month I would get the next month, since I didn't make any money with pay stubs or anything to show that I made any. And, they would ask me, did you make any money? And the response I'd give would be no. The next month, if I made somewhere close to $1,300, and this happened once or twice, if I made $1,300, like let's say in August, that means I wouldn't get a September check because they would figure I'm going to make the same amount the following month, so I don't need a check. Well, the following month I made no money and I had no Social Security benefits, or virtually none if they decided to give me any at all. So it was really affecting my ability to sustain my lifestyle. I talked to Social Security about that, and they said, look, we understand you want to work and you want to get back to society and not be, at least contribute to what the government is giving you, which is why I really wanted to start working. Is I didn't want to be a lazy guy that just said, well, here's the system, and the system's going to take care of me till the day I die. That's really what this boils down to. And you'll find that most people who have a challenge, and even those that don't, feel the same way. But especially those that are, at least in my experience, again, that have challenging medical needs physically, they want to get back to society. They do. It's a common thing. Well, when I got done having a huge discussion, because I couldn't figure out why they weren't giving me checks 1 month and why they were the next, they finally explained, your checks are based on what you made the previous month. So again, if I had made money 1 month but the next month I didn't, the reason I didn't get a check for the next month is because they based it on what I made the previous month, which was really affecting my lifestyle. So they encouraged me to get out of the line of work where you have to make a sale or you don't make any money. That being said, I learned very quickly you needed a job where it was a steady paycheck and it wasn't based on did you make a sale or not. The other problem, though, that you run into when you have a complex medical need disability, sometimes, let me be clear, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, is that you may know you have higher capabilities in life, or you may believe that, and you may want to try something different, but society doesn't exactly see that, or at least your employer may not. Let me word it that way. Um, a prime example of that would be my next job, because I, as soon as I found out that rule with Social Security, I immediately quit working for the News Miner. I turned in my resignation and said, I can't do it because I need a consistent paycheck so that my benefits don't get affected and I don't run the risk of losing my Medicaid, which then would cause me to lose my waiver. There was just a whole bunch of factors that are involved that need to be considered. That's not what this video is about, but that's the reason those kinds of jobs, at least in my experience, are not good. Can you learn things out of them that will better your life later? Yes, you can. But I wouldn't do that unless you had another source of income coming in. But again, the next job I got was Fairbanks has a mall, which technically is more of a hallway than it is a mall. It's called Bentley Mall. But it's pretty much just a long hallway of stores. It's not really a mall like Anchorage has Fifth Avenue Mall, which some people still call that not a mall, but I call that at least a mall because there's floors, there's multiple sets of stores, there's eateries. We didn't really, Fairbanks doesn't really have that. But I was, out wandering town in my chair one day, and I finally just said, I'm going to go into the mall and see if there's a store that I might be able to apply for a job in. Well, I looked around, and this was back when the internet was still, it was, early 2000s, so the internet wasn't like brand new, but a lot of employers were not posting jobs on the internet yet. That wasn't really a thing that people were doing heavily. Fast forward that job, I went in to the mall, and the only store that had a hiring sign up at the time, and I remember this because I was kind of excited because, young guy, loved the idea at the time, was KB Toys, which now doesn't even exist anymore. They're out of business. The corporation folded, but they were the only ones hiring. So I went in, I grabbed an application, a paper one, and I remember the assistant manager's name was Christina, and she was the one that handed me the application and said, apply, we do have openings. Very enthusiastic. I filled out the application. Not right there. I had to go home to get my staff's help to fill it out because, again, it's paper, and I couldn't scan it and fill it out on a computer like you can nowadays and turn it in. Well, I got my staff's help to fill out the application, and I went back over there. Not that day. It took a day or two because I had to wait till my staff had time to really sit down and help me fill it out. I went back over there on my own and dropped it off. When I did that, I was excited because I'm like, hey, I at least turned in an application. Now at this time, I technically still qualified for supported employment. So what happened was I talked to them about using my support employment to start job searching at the time. And I went out job searching. Excuse me, I had something stuck in my throat for a minute there. I went out job searching and started looking for other jobs in the places that were beneficial, or not beneficial, but at least open to the idea of someone like me working for them because of my physical disability. That being said, there weren't that many. I got a lot of weird faces like, why are you working? Why do you even want to work? Your needs are such that, how can you work physically? Um, and I had said, look, I really want to do this, and I kept trying to apply. Nobody was calling me back for any job. I got hired by, or I got a call by KB Toys. I went down there on my own because my job coach was not, excuse me, was not able to drive me down to the mall. And we'd been applying everywhere. I just wasn't having any luck getting a job. And I went down to KB Toys. Christina, the same manager that gave me the application, actually is the one that interviewed me. She hired me right then and there on the spot. She said, I think you have the demeanor and the willingness to try learning how we do business. So she hired me right then and there. It wasn't even a discussion. It was, you're hired. And as luck would have it, the reason I was hired was because the fall was ending and winter was going to hit, and I got hired because they knew that Christmas of like 2002 was around the corner, where the holidays were, and they needed extra bodies because they didn't have very many in that store. So they hired me, where it was a good job because I learned a few things about sales in it, but it was a bummer job in the sense that when the GM was there, because Christina was the assistant manager of the store, when the general manager of the store was there, I got relegated to sitting outside the store for 8 hours and handing out flyers all day, every day I was scheduled. That's all I was allowed to do. I wasn't allowed to do anything. The days that the GM wasn't there, Christina would have me do more than that because she learned that I was capable of more than that. So she'd have me be a sales rep, or if a new employee would come in that wasn't very good with sales, they would have me trade places for a little while so that we could get some sales so that the store would make money. I'm not saying I'm the be all end all. I wasn't, but there was sometimes we'd have a new employee that wasn't as good with people as she learned that I was. So she had me switch places, and we would do sales and stuff like that. Now, if we got really, really busy where there was a lot of people, I would have to go back to handing out flyers at the door, and somebody that could walk and move easier down the aisles would be the one that would have to be the one working the store. And that was fine. But I remember one instance that I'll never forget because I felt, picked on, which, hindsight being what it is, wasn't what really happened. But the manager of the store was not very keen on me working there. Evidence of that was I remember one instance, I couldn't get a ride down to the mall, and I was supposed to have a ride. It was already scheduled. At the last minute, the people that were supposed to give me a ride called and said they weren't going to make it. Well, I looked at my watch and said, there's no way I'm going to make it to work on time. So I went to call my employer and say, through no fault of my own, I'm not going to make it to work today. I don't have a ride. It was getting cold. It was getting hard to drive. There was not snow or anything on the ground yet, but power chairs don't like cold weather very much. They tend to gripe. There tends to be issues. And I'd already missed timing for a bus that would come by the house I was living at the time, that I could be at the bus stop that goes by the mall. That bus had already come and gone for the time frame that would have got me to work on time. But again, I didn't know that my ride wasn't coming until the very last minute. So I called my employer and said, I'm not going to make it. He basically said, you get down here now or today, or don't bother coming back because you need to be here. So I, against my staff's better judgment and mine, drove down there, went to work, had my part of my chair break because of a pothole that I ended up hitting and stuff like that, but I made it to work my shift, and then dealt with things. Fast forward that to a couple years later, and I ended up getting a job working at the movie theater in Fairbanks. This was around 2004, because I'd only worked at KB Toys for a season. When I was hired, I was told it was permanent part-time. Unfortunately, by the end of Christmas, the GM crossed my name off the list of employees. I went back to go get my schedule, and he said, oh no, I moved you back to seasonal, you're let go. So I, left that job, which, like I said, hindsight being what it is, shortly after that, they sent out a notice to all employees and former employees of KB Toys that they'd filed Chapter 11 for bankruptcy, basically, and they were going under, that they were no longer going to be in business. So hindsight being what it is, it was kind of a good thing. But I get a job at the movie theater around 2004, and I worked there till 2003-ish area, because I stopped around 2007. I worked there for 4 years, and I spent a year as a floor staff, just tearing tickets at door, or doing ushering on days where it wasn't very busy and they didn't really need a door person to tear tickets because it was really slow. They would let me do cleaning up of theaters to the best of my ability with a partner, and they liked my work ethics because I always showed up, or tried to anyway. Then I got suggested by one of the assistant managers at the time, suggested he was leaving. He had said that he had to quit the movie theater because he and his family had to move to Lower 48, and another manager was leaving for different reasons, but he had suggested that I apply to take his place, and I thought he was nuts, but I applied. I had to go through multiple interviews, which in hindsight was a little unfair because not everybody else had to do that as well. They only had to go through one interview. I had to go through 2 interviews in order for me to get the job. One with the GM and one with the district manager for the entire district of the company. In hindsight being what it is, I felt just excited to have the second interview. But then I realized that nobody else had to do that. The reason is because they wondered why I applied, because with my physical disability, they didn't think I could do the job. I proved them wrong, obviously. They hired me to be an associate manager, and I was there for... I worked there as an assistant manager for 3 years. I loved the job. I eventually had to quit for my own reasons. It had nothing to do with me not liking the job. There was other things that had happened that caused me to quit. But then I decided I wanted to try to find another job. Well, again, the only thing I could find was something in retail, because nobody else wanted to give me a chance to do anything else. Every other job I applied for wasn't working at the time. So I applied for the theater, for that one job, and then I applied for another retail job, and I ended up working for Avies. Real long story short, you can sense a pattern here. I was getting nothing but retail jobs. And while they were all good, I got to a point where I started wondering, because of my physical challenges in life, is that the only kind of work I'm ever going to be able to get? Because my physical needs, even while working, which has to do a lot with personal care and nothing else, were such that I didn't know if anybody would be willing to take a stab with me on me working. Well, fast forward to now, I've been working for the company that I work for, and it's a office style admin job since, as of September, it'll be 4 years. So, I started 4 years ago, which means you're looking at 2018 or so is when I started. So September of 2017. So yeah, about 4 years area is when I started. That being said, the point behind this whole thing is society is going to try to tell anybody with a severe physical set of circumstances, and that's also considered complex medical needs, that they can only do a certain style of work if they have a job. I would argue, and so would a bunch of my friends who are also physically challenged, don't let society do that to you. If they try, push the boundary, push back. Say, no, I'm capable of more. You have to believe for yourself that you can do more. I have someone that I know that, frankly, even this person tries to push me, and this person is also severely physically challenged, like I am. Matter of fact, this person I'm thinking of as I'm recording this is not going to be happy that I used the word challenge. This person doesn't like it. But I'll tell you that person to this day is someone, ever since I met this person, they're a good friend of mine. I'm really close to this person. They give me feedback all the time, and they push me. I'll be honest, she pushes me. And she's a good friend. We've known each other for years, but she's believed in me quite a bit, as has many other people that are not challenged, by the way. But sometimes, as I recently was reminded by somebody I interviewed here recently for the Disability Pride event, sometimes it just takes meeting the right people, and those people seeing your capability for you to start to succeed in life. So I guess this whole video's message to you folks is, when you're looking for a job, look for something, first of all, that is consistent, as far as you're not being paid on whether you did something in sales or not. But also, don't let somebody tell you, if you have a set of complex medical needs, which could be anything that could be considered complex, and really only you or your doctor is going to know whether that's considered a complex physical medical need that could limit your ability to work. But don't let anybody, especially since the situation the planet still is dealing with has proven people can work virtually. Don't let anyone tell you, I don't know if you could do that job. Push back on society's perceptions of what you are capable of. I have, but it's taken me to have friends and mentors and even family members to say you can do something. nor for me to succeed. But I will tell you, I would not be anywhere if it wasn't for that. So what I'm saying to you is, don't give up on being a contributing member of society and finding a job that you can physically do, because there always is something, is what I'm getting at. There's never not a job that somebody can do. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't people that experience the type of physical, complex medical needs that makes it impossible, or it really doesn't make it economical for them to work. But I would argue that even those people could find a job doing something that they love, even if it's a volunteer job. You got to start somewhere, folks. But just don't get yourself into a hole where you get a job where you get relegated to something that somebody else thinks you can do, or it becomes a pattern of those are the only kinds of jobs you can get. Because I'm just saying this from personal experience, it can feel like that. It can feel like, unless that's what you want, society is going to try to tell you you can only do this kind of work, because that's all they can see is that working and nothing else. So just push your own boundaries and look for a job that you want to do within reason. Even if you've got the mental ability for it, but you don't have the physical ability given you a set of circumstances, don't let that stop you. Look for a job that fits your heart and your desire, what you want to do, but don't let society get in the way of telling you you can't do something, because trust me, you can. Only you know what that is going to feel like or what that would end up being, but you can do it. Anyway, this video turned out to be a bit more of a motivational speech than I thought, but I hope I've given you some ways of looking at something, or something to, not ways to look at something, but something to think about. And again, virtual is a way that I've been doing my line of work now for over a year because of the situation the planet finds itself in. I thank you for your time. I hope this helps give you some thoughts on what to look for as far as jobs go. The only last message I would say as far as that goes is find something that is consistent pay. And when I say consistent pay, I'm not talking about high rate of pay. I'm talking about if you take the job, you're going to get a steady paycheck every 2 weeks or every month, however they break out their paying schedule, just so that your benefits and everything else doesn't get affected. Because if you get a job where it's based on commission, which is what that newspaper job was, you're going to end up having problems. Anyway, folks, I hope you have a great day. If you have any questions or you would like to talk to me, you can always reach out to me at tnoah@hopealaska.org. Take care. See you in the next video, folks.